What does real-world success in business actually look like? Welcome to Bearcats Mean Business, the official podcast of the University of Cincinnati's Carl H. Linder College of Business, where inspiring career stories, honest lessons, and fresh business perspectives from the people building impact in the real world come together. Tune in for inspiration, practical business insights, and forward-looking thought leadership on how ambition turns into action. And now, for today's episode. Jeff, thank you for being here. You grew up in Ohio and you went through the co-op program as a UC business student. What impact did that early professional experience have on the trajectory of your career?
Honestly, everything. Really did. One, just financially enabled me to be able to go to school and finish school. But secondly, I was very fortunate to get a role at an investment boutique up in Cleveland that introduced me to the institutional equities world, which back in the mid-'80s at that time, that was pretty much an Ivy League dominated industry. And I was very fortunate to work for a very well-known and just terrific mentor that enabled me to kind of just see what the business was like, and I really fell in love with it. I had always had an interest in the stock market as a kid, and getting a job, co-op job in it, really kind of accelerated and really kind of confirmed everything that I had thought I wanted to do.
Jeff, you touched on your co-op experience. For students here going through co-ops, they may not know exactly where they want to land in finance and capital markets. What advice would you give them about just general exploration, about exploring opportunities in these fields?
I would say follow what interests you, for one, and you may find out that isn't necessarily what you really thought you wanted to do. And there's nothing wrong at all with not knowing what you want to do. For whatever reason, I kind of did, but that doesn't mean everybody does, certainly. And co-op, I think, gives you a great opportunity to find out in more of a test trial kind of fashion, do I like this or not? Do I excel in this or not too? I was always very curious and always wanted to learn. So for me, getting into the industry that I did, one of the kind of interesting things about it's good and bad, is you get to learn a little about a lot, but not a lot about a little. I mean, you get exposed to a lot of different industries, a lot of different sectors, a lot of different companies, and how they approach things and running a business, but you never become an expert in any of them. So that's kind of perhaps the downside, but I always thought, for me, the one thing I liked was being able to understand a broader array of information and sectors.
Yeah, what always strikes me is like you figure out maybe what you don't want to do when you co-op too, which is, I think, so eminently helpful in your career journey.
Accounting.
Yeah. For you, accounting?
For me, it was accounting.
Okay. Yeah. Let's shift to some topics on capital markets and then your current role with the Texas Stock Exchange. You spent nearly a decade leading listings efforts in the Southeast for the New York Stock Exchange. For many people, the IPO process is very mysterious, right? What actually happens behind the scenes that you can talk about when a company prepares to go public? What are like the top things that maybe people just don't know about?
Getting ready in time. The one thing that companies quite often think of, hey, let's go public, and then in 3 months, 6 months, we're gonna do that, and that really can't happen that quickly. You really have a lot to prepare for in going public. There's a lot of disclosure you got to do, controls, accounting audits that have to be done, HR departments, compliance departments. There's a lot of things that companies quite often kind of forget about. They're just thinking about, hey, we make good widgets and innovative widgets, and it's growing like crazy, and we're awesome, and they know that very, very well, but they kind of forget about the backside of preparing a business and getting ready for becoming a public entity, because it's a different animal at that point. You are reporting to shareholders and to the owners of your company, and you have a responsibility for that. And there's a lot of protocols associated with that too, and the companies don't always necessarily have a good understanding of that. There's a lot of really good firms out there that help companies get ready to go public. IPO readiness firms that consult with them and say, hey, here's kind of the stage where you are, here's the kind of industry and the company that you are. We'll help you get ready, and they make sure that all their ducks are in a row before they go public.
Okay. And then in that same vein, what are the biggest misconceptions the actual founders and maybe the would-be chief executives themselves have about going public, about maybe what they are responsible for and not responsible for?
Yeah, well, that kind of gets to one of the bigger picture issues that there's been with companies going public. We're down almost 50%, the number of public companies today versus 1997.
Wow.
50%. And one might say, well, so what? What does it matter if somebody that makes widgets is private or public? Well, the fact of the matter is public companies average about a third more employees than private companies, and they also pay them more on average. So if you do the math with that, that's better for the economy and everywhere. You just have a greater society with that. And then thirdly, you have companies being private. Others don't get to share in that growth and that wealth. I think one example that's going to become quite evident soon is you have SpaceX is going to go public at $1.5 trillion or something along those lines. It's a 23-year-old company. Why did it wait so long?
Yeah.
They all have good reasons for it, but what if they had gone public when they were, say, a 10-year-old company? That 13 years of growth that we've seen, all that wealth, translates into your 401k, my IRA, my dad's pension, my mom's ETF, et cetera. And so you want to bring more of that private growth and private wealth into the public marketplace. And for us, one of our key missions that we have at the Texas Stock Exchange is to create an environment that's less onerous in terms of the reporting disclosures, which is one of the things that they would be responsible for. The costs associated with being public have become draconian in many cases. It just should not cost as much as it does to go public, but also to stay public. The governance has been weaponized in the marketplace, and we're looking for ways, and we already have changed a number of protocols in the marketplace specific to the landscape in Texas for public companies to be able to operate under a more pro-business friendly listing environment.
You just touched on a few of them, but I want to ask kind of the overall question related to your position as Global Managing Director for the Texas Stock Exchange. What is the, chief business problem that the Texas Stock Exchange is looking to solve?
It's really a little bit of what I just mentioned, in the fact of too many companies just don't want to be public, or the ones that are have a great deal of difficulty in operating publicly because of some of the reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah.
You've had a transition over really 30 years, and by no one's fault, but just this kind of boiling a frog kind of increase in terms of regulatory disclosure, such that companies bear an excessive burden in many cases of reporting and the costs associated with it. So, for example, in Texas this past year, we actually helped author and pass some legislation that really specifically targets some of the very costly and complicated processes for being public. Proxy threshold, proxy oversight, and then what's called business judgment rule. Those three things, I won't go into depth here on those because I'm not an attorney and they're very legal, but people should know they're just a very costly component to being public. They're very onerous, very time consuming. And so by putting in some thresholds that are specific to being in Texas and listed there, companies don't have to be subjected to them to the same degree that they currently are elsewhere. So the simple way to think of that is it takes up far less time of management so they can devote it to running the business and can save significant amount of money. In the larger the company, perhaps tens of millions of dollars of ongoing costs of a company that come out because of that subjectivity that they would have related to what we're trying to put forth.
Sure. So what is a day-to-day like for you in trying to fulfill this mission at the Texas Stock Exchange?
Yeah, well, to date, it's been about just kind of putting together the platform. We're building it from scratch, everything. The trading exchange itself has been built from scratch, but also the design of what we call the listings business. And the listings is what a public company that is public goes through. They are a listing on the current exchange, which in today's world is just two. It's NASDAQ and the NYSE.
Right.
We will be a third choice for companies to be able to have that. So for me, we've kind of set the stage. We've prepared our platform. Some of the key details for it will be filed with the SEC fairly soon so that the world and companies will know. But for us, it's heads down right now talking with those companies. And really, it's not selling them. It's just educating them on what we're doing because it is so transformational from what they're used to. Anybody in the industry or the business today, the only thing they've ever known is just to compare an NYSE to a NASDAQ listing. Now it's a third alternative, and that third alternative has completely different characteristics to it than what they've known. So we're going to be very focused on engaging with companies in that regard. And I got to say that the challenge for us is going to be getting that message known outside of Texas. Inside of Texas right now, the entire business community knows exactly what we're doing. Outside, very few people really kind of see. It's just not been something that's been talked about nationally as much as it has. So for us, it's getting those doors open and having the conversations. And when we do have the conversations, people are very, very struck by the uniqueness of what is going on, but also too the magnitude of what's going on. It's kind of hard for them to kind of necessarily fathom this is something that could really significantly alter their ability to operate as a public company.
Yeah, I imagine if you're talking to a company, say like in Illinois, like, and you're reaching out to them, like they'd be like, okay, that's great, but why should I be interested in this venture that's hundreds of miles away from me and potentially different rules, different states, all that sort of stuff? What's your pitch to them in that case?
Yeah, well, that's very true. They say, listen, I'm in Illinois. Why do I care about Texas? And the fact of the matter is the way it's been designed, it's kind of designed to be a very Texas incorporated company. So you can keep your business wherever you are, but if you incorporate in Texas and list in Texas, you are then subject to kind of a lot of the changes in the programs that we would have to offer. So a company doesn't have to move a single employee in order to garner some of the advantages that we're going to put together. And even still, they don't even have to reincorporate in Texas. That just would allow them to be able to opt in and provide some of the changes that have been done and the changes that will be done. There's several more initiatives that we have coming in the 2027 session.
Okay.
Texas only meets every other year, which is kind of interesting.
Okay. Interesting,
But it's all part of a multi-year plan to be able to develop and foster further and further changes. But outside of that, the platform that we will have that will be released fairly soon will be very unique too, and it will be very advantaged to a company regardless of where they're located. I would say some of the interest that's really surprised me is from outside the United States. Canada, Korea, Japan, Brazil, Europe. We've had a lot of inbound inquiries from companies located over there because I think what they kind of see at us and what we're doing, we're very aligned with just the business community in Texas, period. It's a very pro-business friendly state, and as a result, you've seen a significant amount of growth in the state, both in companies relocating there, but also just the growth of what is taking place there. And it's not just Texas either. It's really kind of a whole southeast region of the United States is the highest and fastest growth region in population, job growth, and GDP within the United States. And it's because it's an environment that wants to foster growth because the companies just need to have that ability to be able to grow without further constraints.
Right. Let's transition to some leadership topics. Your work has involved connecting companies, investors, and financial institutions. What leadership or relationship building skills have been most essential in sort of navigating that environment? And I'm sure we've been some tricky waters at times.
Yeah, I think networking is something that, and networking is part of it, and relationship building apply to everything that you do. I can remember the first job that I had in the investment industry. We were required to have so many lunches, so many meetings with folks to kind of build a network because we were also a money management business at the time too. And I just remember thinking, I'm 24 years old. I don't know anybody with any money. I don't know anybody of any stature. How in the world am I going to build this network and be able to thrive off of it and contribute to the company? And it's just bit by bit by bit by bit and over time. And it takes time, but it's something that I think you just kind of always kind of work on. And the way I've always kind of looked at it is if I just help whoever I've engaged with or met, that's a connection that I have that will just grow and grow and grow over time. And you just never know where an opportunity for you might come from because of that, or a situation where you're just helping someone. I've never done it necessarily to get compensated for it. It's more like if someone has a problem or needs a connection or needs some kind of support, you provide it and you help them. You win, they win, and over time it just really kind of builds on itself. And I think that applies to anybody in any kind of role in any industry, even if you're in a very technical industry too. You're going to learn to share traits in the industry. And I think that always just kind of benefits somebody. But if you always look to help the other person, good things will happen in time.
All right. Building off that, what have you learned about building trust in high-stakes financial environments that's sort of stuck with you over the years?
Be honest. Never over-exaggerate. Be very candid. Be very objective. That way, you never have to worry about what you said. You said it's good. And I just think that if you're helping somebody, but in my case, I think in the industry that I've been is you're helping them do their role. That goes a long way. One time I had one of my clients was kind of struggling with handling the morning call, which is this massive influx of information that an investment manager would have. And I asked, I said, could I spend a morning in your office to kind of see what you mean by that? And they said, yeah, that'd be great. And so I did. And so I literally sat in my client's chair and seat that morning to see what he goes through in order for me to understand how I can better process and integrate and work with him. And that was an eye-opening morning. One, some of my competitors, I couldn't believe were actually competitors because they were kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked. But two, it really gave me a very good perspective and understanding of what my client is having to go through that helped serve me better to be able to serve them. And I think that's also something that can apply in any industry. If you better understand, who you're reporting to, not who you're reporting to, but who you're, trying to either sell to or work with, you're going to be able to do your job better. And what that does, I think, is that builds trust because they know you've got their back. You're trying to help them,
Yeah.
And that goes a long, long way.
You went and literally put yourself in their shoes. I love it. You spent decades working with companies at pivotal moments in their growth. What traits have you seen in the leaders who successfully navigate these transitions, these big transitions?
Probably the one piece of advice that someone gave me a long time, and it's a fairly well-known adage, is God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them accordingly. I think the best leaders I've seen for companies did just that. During times of crisis, they learn to listen. What is the problem? What is going on? And then because of their background experience, they're able to process that, I think, appropriately and make the better decisions. Being rash, lashing out, being kind of more aggressive, I don't think really serves anybody well as a leader, particularly a senior leader at a company and during a pivotal time, because you got to put yourself in your employee's shoes, like that they're concerned too, or your customer's shoes, they're concerned too. It's just how you help them kind of navigate and get through that is what's going to ultimately matter. And I just think the only way to do that is deep breath, listen, analyze, figure out your alternatives, make your decision, and then follow through on it.
Jeff, after decades in the industry, you're now reconnecting with the Cincinnati business community. We talked before airing about some of your fun experiences this week in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. What role, and we've touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can expand about it, what role has networking really played in your career, and how do you make the use of it now?
It's kind of what I said earlier. It's helping others is networking, and that for me goes way back to when I was in school here. I reconnected, as I mentioned, with several friends and guys here recently, and some of that actually turned into some business-related connection opportunities that I'm working on. Who would have thought that 40 years later, a fraternity brother, would have had something like that would apply to me today of something that I'm engaged with.
You just never know.
Yeah, and vice versa actually too. I'm kind of reversing course with another one. But I just think it's just making friends and just being engaged with the people that are around you every day in the moment, and then in the moment over time, it's a series of moments so that it kind of becomes this large basket of relationships. And for me, a lot of it started back at UC here, many years ago, and it's great to still have the connections from back then, still today, that are made, but they're also making new ones too. So for me, reconnecting here with the university recently has been terrific. I look forward to doing more with the university. It's been fun to kind of walk back here on campus and kind of see some of the buildings still the same and quite a few different, for sure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I'd say it's a lot better today than it was 40 years ago. It looks great.
Yeah.
But it's, to me, it's kind of coming home to roost, and perhaps it's just, my older age kind of getting to me that, feels that sentimentality of being able to come back to UC and help others, I think is very exciting for me.
Yeah. Let's close with some advice to future leaders. When you look at the next generation of leaders that are coming out of the Linder College of Business, or perhaps elsewhere too, What skills or mindsets do you think will matter most, I guess, maybe in this economy and the future economy?
I'm a bit old school in that regard, but to me, it's a firm handshake, looking the person in the eye, talking very clearly, don't mumble, don't trail off, stay focused on who you are engaged with at that moment. I think is very important. Get your head out of your phone is what I tell my kids, quite often. So it's not like just the business world, it is my kids.
Yeah.
Last night at the leadership dinner event that we had here, one of the things I talked about, I said, I can remember two things that P&G taught me when I first got out of school and started that have applied to me forever. My kids make total fun of the 5 Ps that I reinforce with them, but it holds very true with business too. It's proper preparation prevents poor performance. And that applies to everything, to everybody, all the time, no matter what. And I think about the times where I failed or where I didn't do as well as I could have, like this podcast. And proper preparation, would have prevented poor performance, I think is something that always applies. And it's something I think that perhaps gets forgotten about in today's environment because we've become so short-term. I think with whether it's just the digitization of the world, whether it's through devices or the way we receive information and news flows and communication is very short. We're not reading as much, we're not writing as much, as lengthy as we were. I think that's important to really kind of think through and be very thorough in everything that you do. So it's a little bit of old school, but at the same time too, the economy in the world has adapted so much that it's become very decentralized. So, for example, in finance, or most of my career, New York was it. That was the centralization. If you were involved in finance, it was New York, period. Today, that's not the case at all. In fact, one of the things we talk about at the Texas Stock Exchange is J.P. Morgan has more finance employees in Texas than they do New York today. Many other firms are getting along the same kind of ratio too. That would have been unimaginable years ago. So as people think about their careers and what they're looking for, just know that it does change, and it's just because it is the way it is today, it doesn't necessarily it's going to always be that way. So keep an open mind to that. But if you stay focused, show up, do your job, and just be very disciplined, success will come.
Okay. Last one for you. If you could give your younger self, maybe younger Jeff, who is co-oping here at UC years ago, if you give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Deep breath. Most daily hiccups are just that. They're daily, and they're hiccups.
Deep breaths, that's it. Love it.
Yeah. I let myself get caught up in the moment too many times, too quickly, without taking that deep breath, pausing, reflecting, thinking about what really should be thought or what action should be taken after that. I don't think it ever hurts to deep breath, count 1, 2, 3, and then try to respond.
I think that applies to everything in life and not just business. Yeah, it's a sound advice. Well, Jeff, thank you for being here. Thanks for being on Bearcats Mean Business.
All right. Thank you very much, too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Bearcats Mean Business. If today's episode sparked a new idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see your path a little more clearly, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with someone in your network. Thanks for being part of the conversation. And remember, real-world success begins here at Lender.